Welcome to the Campaign Trend Podcast, where you're joining in on a conversation with the entrepreneurs, operatives, and experts who make professional politics happen. I'm your host, Eric Wilson. As we gear up for the 2026 midterms next year, there are some big challenges facing campaigns when it comes to online fundraising. Specifically, the two most important channels for reaching donors, email and texting. To help us break down what's going on, what we can do about it, we're joined by Dave Perkert, Executive Vice President for Marketing at Tag Strategies. Dave has been in the online fundraising space for many years, and he's the perfect person to catch us up on what's going on. So first, Dave, let's talk texting. Apple announced a few months ago that when it released its latest software for iPhone called iOS 26. So that's probably what we'll use to talk about it. In September, so next month, it's going to change the way iPhones handle text messages from numbers that aren't saved in your contacts. Just describe for us kind of what's changing there.
Yeah, so from our understanding, it's the numbers that aren't saved in the phone are going to kind of be filtered. So they would go from, you're going to have different filters from your known senders and then your unknown senders. Any numbers that you don't have saved are going to kind of fall into that unknown sender bucket.
Yeah. And here's why it's a concern for campaigns, right? So according to our polling at the Center for Campaign Innovation, 53% of voters and 65% of donors use iPhones. So if this goes forward sort of on for everyone where unknown numbers aren't going to get texts, what is this going to do for fundraising?
Yeah, and I think some of this is a kind of a wait and see mentality that we're having at Tag. We're definitely taking steps to be ahead of it. Um, this type of thing has happened in the past. I mean, Apple
Hmm.
introduced the privacy features for email. We also kind of had to wait and see then. It didn't quite have the impact that we thought it might have. So for this, we're just kind of waiting to see what some of the default settings are going to be. We don't know the exact impact. I think a lot of the folks are at Tag are kind of leaning towards this might be a slower burn, but there's certainly people who have voiced their concern about it, and I think all those concerns are very valid.
Yeah, and we do need to give Apple's perspective on this because they have responded by pointing out that this feature to filter text from unknown numbers already exists. So people can go in and find this like really buried. I turned it on the other day. You can turn it on in your settings. And so what they are saying is that they're updating the feature, that they're going to make it easier for the people who have that turned on to see and can control their messages from unknown numbers or unsaved numbers is really what that means. And so we have to wonder, did some of the backlash from NRSC, other groups like that, change this? Because in all of the dev versions that we've seen of iOS 26, it's on by default.
Yeah.
So you hit on the nail on the head. It's a really question is this on by default or is it not?
Yeah, and what I would say to that is, obviously Apple has called a lot of attention to this. We know there's going to be increased adoption.
Yeah.
Really, what we still don't know is what the final release is going to be and what is going to be used to determine kind of what goes through and what doesn't go through to the main filter. So, Apple, by their own admission, is trying to have a greater impact on what people are seeing. Essentially they're saying, yes, we already have this in place, but now we're going to try to get more people using it. So, my take is even if this comes from a good place, um, conservatives are just tired of big tech trying to kind of control the narrative about what, our messages get through and which ones don't. And so, my thing is that no one should kind of be playing in that gray area of between censorship and free speech.
Yeah. And it's something that, it's protected on the telecom, the carriers, like they have to deliver those texts. And so here we have software kind of stepping in. And one of the things that's really interesting to me in all of this is, again, so I turned it on and I've been playing around with it. I don't have the developer version set up right now, but one of the really interesting things is I turned on known senders or, and texts from Trump's campaign, 88022, their short code, come through,
Yeah,
even though it's not a saved number. Now, you kind of go back in and read, and they say, oh, well, if you've saved the number or interacted with it
sure.
before. And so it's kind of this like chicken and egg problem. Like, well, if I don't see it, I can't interact with it. And so, and then for now, the Trump texts are getting through, even though I don't have the saved number. But that could change, and we're really kind of at the mercy of Apple.
Yeah, and I think that's, one of the things too we kind of thought about is, great, some of this stuff is getting through now. What is the longer term impact going to be?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons we're just, getting ahead of it and recommending everybody, every campaign get ahead of it. Doing contact cards is a one step is a great thing to do.
Yeah, walk us through kind of what are some of the things that we can be doing now. Obviously, some questions are getting resolved, but what are you recommending people do to prepare?
So contact cards is what a lot of people are doing and a lot what we're seeing a lot of. I mean, President Trump is certainly doing it. Some of the committees, Senator Tim Scott, like these are big pushes that I've certainly seen recently. Making sure that those folks are saved to the House file. We definitely
And
recommend
so,
your
what is a contact card for our listeners who might not be familiar with
sure.
what that is?
So it's a save number, and then for President Trump it would be a picture of him,
Okay.
his name. It would have the phone number, but then it could have a link to the Facebook account and all that stuff. So it would be just like any other contact is kind of saved in your phone. It would look exactly the same.
Yeah, and we created over on campaigntrend.com a little tool for you to generate your own. It's called a .vcf file, and that seems to be what the Trump campaign and others are using. Is they're creating that file, really easy to do, and linking to it, and that hopefully we'll get more. I would be curious to hear. I mean, we don't really have a good way of measuring adoption. I guess we could look at the clicks of how many people are doing that. Do you have any sense?
A little bit, and we just kind of started rolling it out in a couple different ways to kind of see what's going to be the best way to do that.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
and so I definitely recommend, in one shape or another, doing that, um, and then just staying ahead of it. So, talking to, your vendor, talking to the campaign, talking to the political side. We've had a couple client meetings the past, couple weeks, and I will say it's been the first question that everyone's asked
Oh,
within.
really good.
So
Well, I'm glad it's on people's radars.
yeah, I think it's definitely on people's radar. Especially when the NRSC responded, I think a lot of people saw that. Um, but no, I mean it really is. It's just we're developing a couple different things to try to get ahead of it as well. And it's kind of getting to that crunch time of everything you can do beforehand. Now is kind of the time that you want to do it.
Yeah, and one of the other things that I've got to mention that is a good workaround is texts from known numbers are still going to get through, and so separate from the fundraising with our get out the vote type stuff, there's been a renewed push in relational organizing with companies like Numinar and Buzz360 with Swipe Bread and sort of using this if you're campaigns texts aren't going to get through, texts from friends are, and it's kind of a renewed push there. And we have to think that like it's probably a good practice to ask people to save your contact number. And if there is a silver lining, it might say, look, I'm going to only save the number of campaigns that I support. And so that text message that's from a scam pack or something like that, it might not get saved.
Yeah. No, and I think it's also, campaigns kind of need to look at it like this, especially right now, ahead of September. It's an investment. It's
Mm.
not your typical, when there's such a heavy focus on net and ROI. You know, these types of interactions are going to be. This is to get folks saved and make sure that we try to limit some of these problems. But it's not going to be your typical fundraising ask that you do so much of in this industry specifically.
Yeah, and I think one of the frustrations, and I mentioned this to a reporter the other day, if like there if you're marketing Coca-Cola or Tide or Ford or whatever, and you might be relying on text message marketing, and you kind of sort of say, oh, this thing is going to change and we're going to experiment. Well, for us, we've got quarterly deadlines. We've got elections coming up. This is hitting right in the middle of our Virginia, New Jersey, and New York City elections, and so it is frustrating because we don't know what's going on, and there's some uncertainty there. And again, like you and I have experienced this in in a number of other instances before as well.
No, 100%. And I think from, I'll just say my personal frustration is it just feels like this is a fight we've kind of continued to have over the past couple of years, and that's kind of where the frustration is from my side.
Yeah, and before we move off of texting, I think one of the important things to remember is, so Apple are saying that it is not going to be turned on by default, which I think is good. However, there's a lot of attention to it, and so I think you're going to see some adoption, especially as people say, I don't really want to get these texts anymore. So it's going to be tough. You're listening to the Campaign Trend Podcast. I'm speaking with Dave Perkert from Tag Strategies about the challenges facing campaigns when it comes to texting and email. So let's turn our attention over to email. Target Victory, our friends at a different firm, recently took what I think is the unusual step of sending a memo to all of its clients about an issue regarding Gmail's handling of Republican fundraising emails. What's the latest there? What's going on now?
Listen, I love it. I mean, so they sent an email to their clients. I haven't seen the actual memo. I know that the New York Post did a story on it,
Yeah.
and about how GOP candidates raise money and reach voters. And essentially, what happened is that Google had been flagging conservative fundraising links as dangerous and filtering them to spam, while Democratic links had no issues. They also did a video, which again, I mean, I think it's great. I mean, it's perfect.
They really have the receipts.
They do. It's a side by side test, and the video shows exactly what they explain, which is that they sent an email with a WinRed link and an email with an ActBlue link, and the email with the WinRed link was filtered to spam, and then you have this big banner that marks it or labels it as dangerous, and no issues with the ActBlue email with the email with the ActBlue link in it. So look, I know that then Google released a statement and said that this was a tech issue, but the evidence to me is pretty clear that that Target Victory, they a lot of people have thought that this has been an issue for a long time, and like you said, they have the receipts from it. Um, I played a ton of basketball in my life, and they always say like the ball don't lie.
Yeah.
You see this video, and it's just like, yeah, I mean, the ball don't lie. This
Right.
is exactly what we've been talking about.
Yeah, and again, just to give listeners a sense of why we care so much about Gmail, 65% of voters, according to our survey data, and 60% of donors rely on Gmail for their email inbox. So it really matters if Gmail is treating emails with links to ActBlue differently than emails with links to WinRed. And at the end of the day, that just means less money raised for Republicans. And
It's money, but I mean, this is also, I think they're, what they did too, didn't just show, fundraising, WinRed links to donors. I mean, this was cross vendor over to clients. So
like to
uh,
just get our jobs done. Yeah.
exactly.
No, and it's a major problem, especially for people who, again, not only are we sending to donors who use Gmail, but we all use Gmail workplace for our internal email. So it's like people's emails just weren't getting delivered simply because there was a WinRed link in the copy, and it was pretty astonishing to see just because it was like it was so obvious.
And Eric too, like, we've been saying that a lot of this stuff we've been talking about for years. I mean, we have been. I mean, um, I know NC State did a study that
Hmm.
said 60% of GOP fundraising emails were more likely going to be flagged as spam than Democratic ones. There was concerns that Google was manipulating searches after President Trump was shot last year. I mean, so it's you kind of put some of these things together, and it's a growing concern that we've had and continue to have.
Yeah, and as you pointed out, this isn't the first time that our side has raised um, concerns, and it's tough to say. I sort of take the view that I don't think this is being done intentionally. However, it's something that they need to correct for because it seems to keep happening a lot. And so there's this idea of maybe there's an implicit bias of saying like, okay, well, most of your employees are liberals and support Democrats. It could be the case that they, things creep into your products that are unfavorable to Republicans. Again, I sort of take the view that I don't think it's intentional. I think that they are telling the truth when they say, hey, this is a mistake, but the mistake always benefits the Democrats.
Right. I kind of look at it too, and I agree with you. Um, it doesn't necessarily need to be a company or a corporation. It really takes only a few bad actors, and political bias will kind of seep through.
Yeah. Um, Obviously, this is a pretty extraordinary case, but what do people need to be doing to make sure that their emails do get delivered? Is there anything that can be done?
No, definitely. I mean, I think some of this might just kind of sound like, from the foundation level, but just making sure you get your authentications right,
Hmm.
DMARC, SPF, make sure to have good sending infrastructure in place, make sure it has a good reputation, monitor your IP health. You want to make sure that we use really good list segmentation. We spend a lot of time focusing on that. We monitor the frequency that we're sending to and the people that we're sending to. And the big takeaway really being, look, when you have bad data on your file, that's when you run into problems, kind of get yourself turned upside down. And so, any spam traps, fake emails, making sure that stuff is all cleaned out. And it's kind of the approach that we take. It's always going to be a constant battle, and we always kind of have a team of guys who are kind of watching this stuff,
Yeah.
saying, how can we adopt better practices? Uh, these folks are way smarter than me, Eric. So I definitely rely on them, and but I know a lot of work goes into it. But uh, you know,
Yeah,
I,
the analogy I like to use is so, calling it email is probably not a good term because if you think about what happens with mail, as long as you get the address right and you pay enough for postage, it is going to get delivered. With email, it would be like if you do all of the things of putting on the address and putting on the stamp, and then there's like a 60% chance that the truck carrying your letter is going to get blown up, and that's sort of what we're dealing with email. And so I think a lot of people, voters or donors are sort of saying, why am I getting all these emails? And quite frankly, it's because they're not getting delivered. And so we have to send more. So the ones that do get through work. And it is one of those things where it's like, if we could just find a solution that got emails delivered to the people that wanted to get them, that have opted in, we wouldn't have to send as much, and there wouldn't be all of these concerns about, putting the thumb on the scale for one party or another.
No, 100%. And we just do one of the reasons we do tons of testing, right?
Hmm.
Making sure our lists are really accurate, making sure the people that we're sending to want to get emails from us. And because, that helps, it helps not only how much we're sending and how much we're inboxing, but it also helps the campaigns ultimately, which is our, number one goal.
Well, my thanks to Dave for joining us and breaking this all down for us. It's something we're going to continue to keep an eye on. So make sure that you're subscribed to our campaign trend rundown newsletter that goes out every Friday. We're keeping up to date on the latest stories about there. And I'll include a link to Tag Strategies so you can see what they're working on in terms of testing and email marketing. If this episode made you a little bit smarter, we ask that you just share it with a friend or colleague. You'll look smarter in the process. Maybe someone's come to you with questions of, hey, what's going on with texting? What's going on with Gmail? And now you've got an episode of a podcast that you can send them, and you're going to look really smart, and more people hear about the show. So remember to subscribe to the Campaign Trend Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode, and visit our website, campaigntrend.com. With that, I'll say thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.